Today on the TMZ Podcast.
Welcome to the TMZ Podcast. Derek and Eric here. How you doing, Eric?
I'm good. How you doing?
This is an episode made just for you.
This is right in my wheelhouse.
This is a music episode. Eric, for people who don't know, is our in-house music expert. It's nice to have one of these around. These stories come up from time to time, and we're swimming in information, and Eric has it all categorized by filing cabinet in his brain.
But this is good because this is also a legal story, so this is your wheelhouse.
Yeah, but I'm not a legal expert, so.
Well, that is true.
So
you just play one on TV.
So here's the story. Dr. Dre, who's been in the news recently via Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yeah.
Remember that whole episode? She came out walking. She put up a video of herself walking out of the elevator in Congress to the opening chord progression from Still Dre. And everyone was like, oh, how could Dre allow her to use it? Dre said he didn't allow her to use it. He sent a nasty letter to her through his lawyer, Howard King, and said, I don't support hateful speech and do your job in Congress. She's now backed down, which is an interesting code in this whole story.
She had legally no leg to stand on.
Yeah, so she basically blinked. She first said, she said, well, I wouldn't post the lyrics to your song. I just like the chord progression because you're a hateful misogynist and an abuser. And then now she said, please be advised, no further use of Mr. Young, Dr. Dre's real name.
Andre Young.
Copyright will be made by a political committee or via social media outlets she controls. So they've backed off. That saga is over.
But maybe not. There might be hope for her to get rights and permission to use his music.
This is true.
Because the big story is Dr. Dre is selling his music.
Yeah.
There's a lot of legal complexity to this, but you've heard of artists selling off their publishing catalogs. And so publishing is like the rights to the music. The master recordings are the actual songs themselves. There's different layers of what you're selling as a songwriter, as a producer. Of course, Dr. Dre is both of those things and an artist, so he has lots of stakes here. But he's selling off a giant chunk of his catalog for around $200 million.
It's fascinating. So let's break down a little bit of how this is going to work, because Dr. Dre started his career as a member. I mean, he had some early stuff.
Yeah, he had World Class Wrecking Crew.
Wrecking Crew and NWA, where he was a member of a band. So we'll talk about
But also wrote and produced a lot there.
But wrote and produced while there. We'll talk about what kind of rights he could have via in music that was produced as part of that band. Then he had a solo career. The Chronic was one of the biggest albums in rap history, sort of launched gangster rap in the 90s in big ways. So there's those rights. And then he has subsequently been a producer for other artists. So I want to talk about
huge
those three
hits. 50 Cent's In the Club, Mary J. Blige's Family Affair, lots of classic, massive
Kendrick
songs.
Lamar songs.
And he's got his own record label, Aftermath, of course.
That's right.
So he's selling off bits and chunks of things to two different entities here. One is called Shamrock Holdings. I'm not familiar with that. The other one is UMG, that's Universal Music Group. So how do we break this down? So
let's start with the three buckets. So how would the music rights exist within a band that he was writing and producing songs for NWA? Does Eazy-E, do Ice Cube have rights
he
to
can
certain
sell.
music?
So if Dr. Dre wrote an entire song, if he wrote all the lyrics, the music, if he's the sole songwriter, then he has the songwriting rights to that. If, say,
this is like Paul McCartney and John Lennon owning rights to certain Beatles songs, even though Ringo and George were playing on them, they're the songwriters.
They're the songwriters. They get the writing royalties. They have the publishing on that. So if, say, Ice Cube or Eazy-E's estate, like say they were credited as songwriters, then Dre could sell his stake in it, his part of it. He can't sell the other person's. If somebody else wrote the song, he can't sell their part of it.
That's right.
So if you buy Dre's rights to that, you make basically a chunk of his songwriting income there, and you have a say in how that song is used.
That's right.
Which means commercials, which means licensing it out to politicians who maybe want to slow motion walk out of an elevator.
Yes.
So maybe Marjorie Taylor Greene, if Shamrock Holdings is open to it, maybe she can get that music back.
Now, legally, there's some wrinkles involved with this. Let's say he's a co-writer with Ice Cube, and you buy just Dre's stake. So on the income side of it, it's easy. You say, the song generated $1 million. You own 50% of the song. You get $500,000. Ice Cube gets the other $500,000. What's a little interesting is the use rights. So if Ice Cube has a different opinion about where this song should be licensed and where it should be used, be it political, be it a cause he cares about, how it's used in a commercial, whether that's perceived as selling out, then those rights get complicated. Who has veto rights to say, no, don't use it there if they're each 50% holders?
That's why
contracts will lay that out.
His solo stuff, it has more value because you can get that outright. If he's the sole songwriter or he has his producing credits, if he owns the publishing. Yeah, and it could be Dre could have had deals. If, say, he wrote a song with an up-and-coming artist, he could buy out their chunk of it.
That's right.
He could still have say over it, even if there's another credited writer. So this is basically all. A lot of this is passive income to Dre, which
Right.
I have to imagine at this point everything is passive income to Dre.
Yeah.
But so this is like the streaming. If you own part of the publishing, or if you own the master recordings, when the songs are streamed or licensed out, you make money off that, and he will still get his chunk of his royalties, I guess. But that's like $10 million a year for him.
Right, we're talking
Which is
pennies per
nothing to
click
him.
on Spotify, but amounts to $10 million of just passive mailbox money, right? Because he has
his
so many
music's-
songs,
he's
that
got
are clicked
so many
times.
They're so listened to still.
So what Dre is doing and what all these artists are doing now? You often see older artists do this. Bob Dylan, Bruce Springsteen selling their catalogs, and the reason they do it is they want the cash up front. And the entities that are buying it say, "I've got a whole business plan. I'm going to bring back Bob Dylan songs. I'm going to put them in Mazda commercials. I'm going to put them in movies." And they see the $10 million a year, and they say, "I could turn that into $20 million a year with my business plan. So I'll give you $200 million up front, and I'll monetize this over time and make $1 billion over 10 years." So everyone wins in the deal.
And
the
the artists then,
gets his
especially
money.
older artists, this sounds kind of morbid, but as you get closer toward the end of your life, then you can decide going ahead what's going to happen to your music after you're gone.
That's right.
There's not legal wrangling and battles in the court. Like, I sold the rights. This isn't, this is taken care of.
And it gives you some cover. Bob
And you
Dylan
get to
can
choose
then-
who has it.
You get to choose who has it, but you also get to say, "I sold it, so I'm not the sellout. I just got the money. What they're doing with my music is not something I necessarily signed on for. I can't really control it once I lose the rights and sell them." So it gives them some cover.
We
as
just
well.
saw that because Neil Young, who sold his catalog, he
Yes.
was famously very protective of it and never would license it to commercials. Then a cover of one of his songs by Beck was used in an ad that he then complained about.
Yeah.
But you sold it.
Hey, Neil, it's not yours anymore.
Yeah.
So Neil has the cover, but he also loses control, and some artists hate that.
But he also
when
still gets paid.
and he got his
So
money.
so lots of artists. This is the kind of the trend now. So the hierarchy of who sold for what, and again, this is because there's publishing, there's the master recordings.
Before we get to that, tell me what a master recording
So that is
'cause
the
that's
song
Holy
itself.
Grail.
That is the
Yes.
song. So if you own the publishing, you could license it out like a cover of it for a film soundtrack or a commercial or something, but you don't own the actual song itself.
Right.
If you buy the master recording and the publishing, that's the full deal there. You have everything. You have final say.
And that's the most
And some artists
expensive
will
to buy.
sell. They might sell the publishing but keep the masters. They might sell the masters but keep the publishing. It's
Right.
and that can affect obviously the value of it. But so people who did everything, Bob Dylan sold everything.
There you
his
go.
songwriting, his recordings, $500 million.
Unbelievable amount of money. Now, people are too young to appreciate Bob Dylan, but he has a trove of
Yeah, he has
songs that
decades.
he's written.
He's very
Not only
prolific.
things he's sung all along the Watchtower.
Yeah.
One of the most famous Jimi Hendrix songs is a Bob Dylan
Yeah,
written song.
Blowing in the Wind. Also, Bruce Springsteen, your favorite, $500 million, $500 million for Springsteen and Dylan. They're the top of the heap there.
All you really want out of Springsteen's catalog is a Manfred Mann song anyway. You want
Blinded
Blinded by the Light.
No, anyway. $300 million. And this was a nice package deal here. You got Phil Collins' solo career.
Oh, the best.
Genesis.
I'd pay $1 billion for that alone.
And a little bit of Mike and the Mechanics, because Mike Rutherford was a member of Genesis. So $300 million, you get Phil Collins and Genesis.
So just a little sweetener on top, you get Living Years.
Yeah, you
from
get
Mike and the
you get
Mechanics.
Silent
You're
Running.
Just like living.
Some other people, huge chunks. David Bowie, $250 million. Sting and the Police combined, $250 million.
Yes.
Of younger artists, more recent, because the younger artists are starting to get in on this now. Justin Bieber, $200 million.
Unbelievable.
Which is a very valuable catalog. Other people, a little bit less current artists, Imagine Dragons, $100 million.
Okay.
David Guetta, the DJ, $100 million. Jason Aldean, country star, $100 million. Some that kind of surprised me a bit, ZZ Top. What do you think their entire catalog went for?
Oh, I'd give ZZ Top $200 million.
50.
50?
50
What a
million.
bargain. We should have bought it.
You got 50 million. Yeah, you do 49,999.
We'll
I
take a
still no,
collection at the
100,000 I couldn't do.
office, yeah.
The one that
Sharp
shocked
Dressed
me.
Man?
This one bothered me. You'll be a little upset about this. An artist, it's their entire catalog up to 1994, which is the
Up to
bulk of
94.
what you want.
Okay.
Huey Lewis and the News.
Oh, wow.
Huey
Huge,
Lewis
by the
sold
way, in the 80s. I mean, those two
Gigantic
albums,
Power of Love
Sports,
from Back to the Future. Yeah.
I would say Huey Lewis probably getting at least 150.
$20 million.
That's insane to me.
I would think just the Power of Love or I Want a New. One of those songs, I would say 20. But
and the songs are so commercial too. They were used
Yeah.
in movies, and there's a high degree of nostalgia for them. They are sort of timeless classics.
But you know,
I can't
I've looked.
imagine.
Huey's streaming numbers not that great. But I think he's a couple of commercials away from people discovering his catalog.
Let me point out one thing that so when Bob Dylan sells his catalog, you get this huge number like 500 million,
Yeah.
and I think the reason is Bob Dylan's basically done. I mean, he still writes, he still
Yeah.
collects awards, but he's in his 80s now, I believe.
Yeah.
And
He does still do albums, but those albums are not nobody's going to pay $20 million for a brand new Bob Dylan album.
They're vanity projects.
It's the catalog you want, and it's the unreleased tracks from the 60s, 70s, even up into the 80s. That's the stuff you want.
But Imagine Dragons is still a band that produces. So when they sell for $100 million,
well, they sold up to right now. Anything going forward is theirs.
That's right. So they could do this again. I mean, we look at this in like baseball. When someone signs a $100 million contract, sometimes it's when they're 35 and then that's their last contract. It's $100 million till the end. They retire, a very wealthy person. Some of them are good enough to, in their 20s, sign one of those contracts, and by the time they turn 30 after a 10-year contract, they're really in their prime and build out a whole new $500 million contract. That may be the case with Imagine Dragons.
Justin Bieber. I mean, $200 million.
Bieber's another one.
Sure, but he's still cranking out hits.
Yes.
So I don't know if that's everything up till now and going forward, or if you just got up to a certain point and everything after is his again.
It's unclear. I mean, he now has retirement money. There's no pressure to produce in the same way once you monetize the bulk
Which he's
of
not
your
even
catalog.
30 yet, which how great is that?
But he's got generational wealth. He's married to a beautiful woman. He may just sort of slow down, and that could be an indication that he's like, I just want a pot of cash and to slow down. Or it may be, I'm done with that, and I'm going to produce my next $500 million. I want that next challenge. So it's interesting to me, the economics of it, given the age of the various people on this list.
And for some older artists, this is the real cash-in, because if they'd had a deal, say, if somebody was big, in their teens and 20s, in the 70s and 80s, 60s even, the record label, depending on the deal they had at the time, lots of these artists don't own their master recordings.
Right.
They don't always own their publishing. And so if you crank out hits for decades and you make nothing off of it because the label's getting paid, when you get older, then you can renegotiate and buy back your catalog, and then you can sell it. And so some of these people are just cashing in their 70s.
That's right.
They weren't making a ton of money all along.
Now, I want to circle back to this big issue with Marjorie Taylor Greene, because the timing, look, these deals are so complicated with Shamrock and UMG.
You think
they were
Dre
being
set this up?
negotiated beforehand. I mean, there's no
obviously
it is
this didn't happen in a week.
Coincidental. However, it raises an interesting issue. He was very upset, and he tissed when Marjorie Taylor Greene used his music. It went viral, and then he sort of sent letters saying, stop doing that. He'll lose that right to do that, assuming Still Dre is one of the songs he's selling, and the use
I'm sure it is.
They're buying the good songs. So
if you're paying $200 million, you're getting that song.
You're getting the good songs. Okay, so now if Nothing But a G Thing sort of plays on George Santos's Twitter or something,
Nothing But a George thing.
Nothing But a George thing. Exactly. Let's say he co-ops it. Now Dre, assuming these deals close, can't really say with any forcefulness, how dare you, but he'll still say it. So here's what will happen is George Santos will use the song. Dre doesn't own the rights to it, but all the news outlets, when it's used, will say, Dre, what do you think of this? Because they're not going to call Shamrock and say, hey, Shamrock, what do you think of this? You're the title holder of Nothing But a G Thing. They'll call Dre. And what Dre will say is, I hate it. He'll say whatever
I don't approve of this.
I don't approve of this.
But
how dare he? That's my art, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, that's the
but
thing.
So the right to stop him now.
The Marjorie Taylor Greene thing, so when he sent the legal cease and desist, he could do that.
Yes.
And she had to take it down legally because he owns the copyright, and she technically violated his copyright claim. When he doesn't own that copyright, if UMG or Shamrock or whoever is like, sure, you can do it.
Right. Now, contractually, he can try to protect this. Is that he can say in a deal that he's negotiating with Shamrock and UMG, you may not use these, you may not sell these to a political action committee or something of that nature. But anytime you write in a contract, you can't use it in this way. All you do is open up avenues to say,
you're devaluing.
You're devaluing
what they're
first.
paying
You're going
for.
to get less money because you've now closed off an income stream, and you're also allowing opportunities to say, well, I'll sell it to a person rather than a political action committee. You create ways when you paper it for people to work around it. That's what I'm sort of trying to say is like, okay, no political action committee, so I won't sell it to the PAC, but I'll sell it directly to George Santos or something like that, or license it directly.
But again,
it's hard to control. What he can try.
Yeah, he can try that, I suppose.
But he will lose a lot of control
if you wanted to,
but loses value.
If you're the one buying this, you don't want to still give him some sort of say. The point is you're buying the rights to do what you want with it.
Free and clear, we call it. When you buy a house, you want to buy it free and clear of all claims, liens, and encumbrances. And that's just legalese to mean I don't want to have to fight any battles. You give me everything you own, and if I get sued down the road, I won't come after you. It's just my problem now, and it's no longer your problem. That's why sales have that language.
Well, that's what we say. It's like with a house, the metaphor of that. Like if you're buying an artist catalog, and like, but this, and this. That's like, well, you can buy this house, but my uncle still gets to live in the basement.
Correct.
No?
It starts to look more like you're leasing the rights to the music rather than buying them. And ownership is a big deal. And that's why, even though these deals are happening more and more frequently, they're momentous, right? Because
It
you are
is.
truly handing over your life's work, and artists have big egos. Artists have control. A lot of them are control freaks. They really want to control their art and not allow people to pervert the meaning in any way. But they also want a lot of money.
Yeah,
So
and
this is the collision of those two
And that's
things.
the funny thing with this, too, with these older artists like Bob Dylan, these people that came up in the 60s and 70s is, back then, the idea of an artist licensing their music for a commercial was seen as such a sellout, pathetic thing. Like, fans used to judge artists. Now, especially because they can't sell CDs and, there's not physical media being sold.
Yes.
Nobody judges artists for doing commercials and...
This is one of the biggest transformations of guys in Eric and I's generation. And watch the movie Reality Bites if you're out there.
Yeah,
Reality
they were
Bites
sellouts.
The central to the movie is the concept of selling out. And now it seems so quaint because it's no longer sort of uncool to sell the rights to things.
No.
You see Travis Scott doing McDonald's crossovers.
Because artists now are like, again, they're not making money off of selling music.
Right.
Like, not traditionally the way it used to be. They make money by licensing it to McDonald's. So get your money, get paid.
That's right.
Nobody, good for you.
That element of
But
Gen
it used
X
to be
is dead.
And especially, but like for boomers, like that whole the hippie generation
sure.
and fighting demand. Like Bob Dylan was the protest song guy.
Yes.
And then to sell all of his life's work. But why not?
Yes. Even later, though, could you imagine a guy like Kurt Cobain doing a Burger King commercial? It's impossible to wrap your head around because they were so countercultural. They were saying, we're the voice of the disaffected.
Yeah.
I'm smelly. I wear a sweater.
I'm smelly.
And now it's just like, it's cool. It's
Get paid.
cool to
Get your
go
money.
to McDonald's and buy a cactus burger. He loses no credibility.
No,
In fact,
it makes
he
them,
raises
they
his
look like
status.
savvy business people.
It's nuts. And so for young people, this is like, oh, yeah, of course. Why wouldn't it ever be cool to sell to McDonald's? To us, we're straddling these two generations where it's like, whoa, that's a weird development.
Yeah.
Anyway, I wanted to sort of lay that out, but we've given you a big sort of slug of information about contract law, and I listen, these are the stories that like sort of really fascinate Eric and I, and we wanted to sort of share them with you.
Yeah, I'm into it.
Anyway, see you guys tomorrow.